I want to say thank you very much for joining the Voice of the Microsoft partner. Today, we got a great speaker, and actually David's here. David Branscombe from Microsoft, and I know he's on camera right now. We're not going to introduce him just yet, but he's going to be coming in just a second, okay? But we, welcome the Voice of Microsoft partner. We really do appreciate it. It is July, right? So we know that there are a lot of folks that are on vacation right now, right? Or maybe, you spend so much time listening to MCAPs that you're like, golly, what do I got to listen to another hour of talking or whatever, right? But, hey, just want to say thanks a lot for coming to this. We do appreciate it. We put a lot of time and effort, into, bringing on good speakers, curating content. And sincerely, we really do appreciate, when you actually spend the time with us today, right? So a couple things, just rules of engagement. If you are new here, or you want to be seen, please use the chat window. We like to use the chat window for a few things. One, go ahead and put your name and contact information if you want to network with other folks that are here, and maybe something to do about your company, like what you specialize in. Totally cool. We don't care. Crancy Group doesn't care. We really want you to use this as an opportunity. Secondly, we're going to be using polls, on this, and we use these polls to kind of accentuate either the conversation, right? Or we actually want your feedback on maybe what we're saying here. So Richard is my brother here, our COO, and I always love to thank him and the rest of the team here. But Richard, if you could do me a favor, when we need to do the poll, give me a thumbs up when we need to do the polls, because I have a different monitor today. I'm having a little trouble. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So that's polls are number 2. Number 3, ask questions in the chat window too. Now, my team will typically answer the level 100, 200s, but if you got something for David, please go ahead and ask that. We're going to look at that. If we can fit it in, we've got about 12 questions kind of already set up, to kind of get into. We're going to be, really looking at, the Microsoft partner shakeup, right? Kind of what's going on. We have all these new changes that are coming in here, and we're talking a little bit about AI. We're talking a little about security. We're talking about a bunch of different things today, which are really, really cool. But yeah, those are really the rules of engagement. Really, just go ahead and do that. Now, in the 60 shows or 65 shows that we've done since 2020, I don't think we've ever kicked anyone out. And I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but we all, lead with decorum here. But if for some reason somebody gets a little unruly, we may just go, see you later, bye-bye. We'll see you later. But we haven't had to do that, so that's really cool. So, and last thing, maybe towards the end, if you have questions or topics that you want us to, talk about in the future, please, put them in there. We'd love to have you. Next month, we've got Jeff Rigsby, who's coming in here, and he's going to be talking about, he's an actual PDM for Microsoft. He's a senior PDM. He's going to be talking about the priorities that he works with his managed partners. It's really cool. Kind of like, it's like lifting the hood and saying like, what in the day in the life of that, right? So we're so looking forward to that, right? We really hope, that's going to be fantastic. All right, with that being said, let me go ahead and get into the agenda. It's very simple today. David Glantz, who's our Director of Alliances, is going to be giving some quick updates, some really, really important ones to understand. Okay, so we're going to do that. And then we're going straight to David Branscombe just right after that. So we're going to go David Glantz first, and then we're going to do the introduction into David Branscombe. So with that being said, I don't like to waste time, man. Let's get this show on the road. David Glantz, would you mind coming on camera? And let's talk about the first thing that you want to talk about.
Yes, I am on camera. Hopefully everybody can see me. Yeah, it was 2 days today, right? It's a great name. All right, a couple of things I want to hit on. I want to start off with COCP, make sure everybody understands how this mechanism has changed for FY27. And then I'd also like to talk about the backend incentives for FY27. Okay, one of the biggest changes for this fiscal, okay, is going after like-for-like renewals will do nothing for you in terms of back-end incentives. That's a big call out, an important thing I need everybody to understand. A motion typically looks like this, okay? You've got a customer, they get towards the end of their, let's call it a 12-month agreement. Let's say you've been courting them, right, as the partner, and you say, hey, instead of renewing with the old partner, come renew with us, right? You say, we've got better upfront margin, or maybe we have better managed services. If there's no growth there and that transition from the old partner to you, there will be no back-end incentives for the first 12 months. Okay, there's some nuance there with solution area. We'll touch on that in a second. Sherman, if you can do me a favor and just go to the next slide.
Sure.
Alrighty, perfect. Now, the way that this is being tracked, okay, is by the PGA, so the Partner Global account that's attached to that customer's tenant. It's also by solution area. I'll walk through two examples in the next slide that'll make a ton of sense. When COCP does not apply is when you're going indirect to direct or vice versa. If there's any sort of merger, acquisition, or split going on, it's not going to apply. And obviously, if a CSP gets deauthorized or just closes up shop, those customers have to go somewhere. So in that case, those customers that are transitioning, COCP would not apply to them. We can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Oops, sorry. There we go.
Okay, couple of scenarios to walk everybody through to make this super clear. Let's say you have a customer who has 100 E3s. Okay, they come to the end of their term. They go to renew with you. You sell them 120 E3s. You will not earn any core or tier one strat incentives, but you will earn the growth accelerator for the additional 20. So you are incentivized for growth, right? When you are bringing over customers that already have a prior CSP relationship. Another scenario is, let's say the customer has, they go from the old partner to you. They just have an M365 environment. They have no Azure to speak of, okay? They bring their M365 environment over, and then they end up purchasing $5,000 a month from you, okay, in Azure. You will earn all of the backend incentives for Azure from day one, okay? The M365, if it's like for like, you won't earn anything there for the first 12, but the Azure you would. That same scenario I just explained is interchangeable across Modern Work, Azure, and BizApps. Okay. Excellent. We go
Dave,
ahead and
quick question.
Yes.
What about the switch from GP to BC?
GP to BC. Jim, do me a favor. Give me a little bit more context here, and maybe these next couple of slides will clear some of that up too. But give me a little more context on GP and BC. In terms of back-end incentives for this fiscal, we're going to touch on both indirect and direct because it's different whether you are a tier one or tier two distributor. For indirect, for Modern Work, the core incentive is gone this fiscal. Okay, it went from 3.75% to 0. Tier one took a small haircut of 0.5 point. That's going to be your BP, E3, and Copilot business bundles. Your tier two is flat. So your E5s, your E7s, your Copilot Studio, your Agent 365, calling in conference, that is still 20 and 20. And the growth accelerator has increased from 7.5% to 12.5%. Okay. So this goes back to the scenario I just discussed. If a customer has 100 and then they sign with you and you sell them 120, you're not going to earn any core because core is gone. You won't earn any of the tier one, 2.5% on all 120 seats, but you will earn 12.5% on the additional 20. Okay. There were a lot of products in prior fiscals where the core rate was applicable. Okay. There's a huge product addendum list. It's an Excel spreadsheet. If anybody needs it and wants to know exactly how these rates are going to impact your earnings, they're impacting your earnings right now. Okay. But what that means for the rest of the year, please reach out. Happy to sit down and kind of go through that process with you. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, for direct, a little bit different. You keep some of the core, okay? So you're not flat if you're direct. You do get 2.5%. Everything else is just like indirect, with the exception of growth accelerator. So it jumped up from 7.5 to 10%. Reason being, the reason that you get to keep some of the core if you're a direct bill partner is because your support costs are going to go up a little bit when Unified becomes the only option in terms of support at the end of this calendar year, right? So PSFP and ASFP are being retired. Let's go and go to the next slide. In terms of Azure, this is fantastic, okay? PayGo and RI and SP are the same, okay, year over year. In terms of the growth accelerator, it's now in a tiered range of 7 to 12%. It's tiered into 3 different tiers based on workload. Sherman, let's go to the next slide here. Tier 3, 12%. So these are going to be the database offerings Microsoft is looking for partners to be pushing. Okay, tier 2 is going to be a couple of the security services along with the Azure AI services, and then tier 1 is going to be everything else, right? So lots of good news in terms of Azure, not just when we're talking about backend incentives, but also if you've had an opportunity to look at the additional MCI funding buckets available in Azure this year, especially for SMB. It's a huge, massive opportunity that did not exist last year. There's multiple ways to leverage those, whether you have a designation or you don't, right? So if you're curious how you get access what that looks like, please let me know. In terms of dynamics, very similar to modern work. The core is flat. Tier 1 and tier 2 took a 1-point haircut, and then we've got the growth accelerator. We can go to the next slide. Very similar for direct, okay? The core took a 1.5-point haircut. Same for tier 1 and tier 2. So just wanted to make sure everybody's tracking on some of these updates. I know there's some questions around growth, the growth margin and things like that. I'm happy to address that here in the chat. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free to drop them in.
Hey, David, hold on a second. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Really appreciate that. Folks, everybody, we're trying to do these updates. This is probably half of 1% of all the stuff that you heard on end caps. But we felt like this was kind of some important stuff. We're going to go ahead and make sure the deck is sent to everybody. Yeah, I like that one. Sent to everybody. And then also, we're going to go ahead and put our first poll up here, just in case you want to talk to David directly. I think our first poll is, would you like to talk to David directly about this? Just say yes or no. No problem. We don't record. We're not going to publish who you are if you say yes or no. Make sure that all the poll results are always super just tightly guarded. We're not here to post what people say. Okay, this way people feel free to go ahead and click on yes or no. So great, perfect. Yeah, so we got a bunch of yeses. We got a lot of no's. No problem. Sounds great. Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's get into our next thing. Let's go introduce our great speaker for the day. And today we have David Branscombe from Microsoft. David, thank you so much for coming today. Really do appreciate it. Would you please introduce yourself, your role? But before you even get into yourself and your role, we'd love to hear the story of how, like the superpower story, how did you become who you are? Like, how did you get to Microsoft? Just a little bit of background about David. We'd love to hear that.
My origin story.
Your origin story, yeah. Then we're Krypton,
Yeah.
I just saw Spider-Man yesterday, so you got hit by a spider. Yeah, I did. It was a good movie, actually. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I actually, way back in the day, back when I was about 16, my after-school job was working on a mainframe computer in a bank, and then from there, years went by. I got hired at the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco. They had a mainframe computer and Stratus systems. I'm not sure if you've heard of Stratus, but they're multi-redundant kind of mainframey systems. I was working there, and the manager that I had, I've always had really good managers. I've been very happy with. She said, "Hey, we're looking at taking the trading floor over to Microsoft Windows. Is that something you'd like to learn?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" So started learning Windows, and Microsoft actually came in to do the migration off of Novell and GroupWise and off of the existing trading system onto Windows 2000, Exchange 2000, all the 2000 stuff. And I was just like, this is pretty cool. I like this stuff. I'd like to work for Microsoft. And I tried multiple times and didn't get in until the last time, obviously. But been at Microsoft now for about 18 years, and just absolutely love it. Good company.
That's so cool. It's been 6 years now for me. It's crazy. It's been that long, but I always remember I love to feel plugged in. You're so plugged into all the latest and greatest stuff, and because you got to consume so much. it's easy for you to consume something, that comes down the pipe, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I get that. That's how it makes sense, blah, blah, blah. Now, I will tell you, David, if you do, when later on in your career you do leave, things are going to be so slow. You're going to be like, what? I don't quite understand. Why is it working so slow?
I'm
Anyway.
probably ready for that. My brain's starting to slow down.
Yeah, so you're gonna get a contractor that comes in your house, and then you're gonna be like, "All right, can you
Yeah.
get this project done? It's gonna be like 3-4 hours in like 2 weeks." You're like, "What? What is your
Yeah.
problem? What do you mean? Give me a quote. I need a quote in 15 minutes." Anyways,
Right.
all right, so fantastic. Thanks so much for coming here today. So yeah, we got about 10 questions here. I'm gonna just kind of start off with the first one, and obviously AI is part of every discussion, right, with our customers. But there's so many ways to have that discussion. What do you think that partners need to focus on right now when having those discussions?
Yeah. So one thing that I would say is start with understanding how to securely adopt AI. Don't just focus on the pitch itself. So customers have been hearing about AI for a couple years now. They don't need just another broad AI conversation. They need help turning their interest in AI into something that is something that they can use and something that they can have confidence is secure for them to use within the organization. So, as a partner, start with the basics. That means helping the customer figure out who can access what, where does their sensitive data live, are the devices that they're using, are they managed properly, like in Intune? Who is it that owns any existing agents or any automations that might exist in the organization? Because in all likelihood, any organization of any size probably already has some people that are tinkering around with AI, maybe even some people that are using agents right now. So how do we identify those things? How do we kind of bring them under a governance umbrella? So for example, you might have a co-pilot pilot going with a customer that exposes a SharePoint site that years ago was shared out too broadly. So Copilot didn't create that access problem, but it does make it easier to see. Then you connect that cleanup work to a real use case. So that might be having a secure Copilot rollout, helping them to build agents in Copilot Studio so they can be properly managed. It might even be something like a Defender or a Sentinel improvement that's tied to faster response to maybe a compromised agent or to a data leakage event. So one thing that's becoming more and more important as we work with partners is understanding that you have to stay with your customers after the deployment. It's not enough to just kind of roll out something and then see you in a year when it's time to renew. You have to be involved in things like the adoption, the governance, the monitoring, and one that's becoming increasingly important with AI because it does tend to create this large expense for many organizations is how do you measure value? So those are areas where partners can kind of keep helping their customers. Some customers aren't going to be ready to scale on day one, right? That's fine. If they have a smaller pilot that has clearly defined access boundaries, if it has a defined set of success criteria, that's usually better than a rushed enterprise-wide rollout. So by having just that small pilot deployment, it gives the customer something useful that they can use as evidence for justifying a larger rollout without creating kind of an ugly cleanup problem or a trust problem if the design isn't done right the first time.
That's really good insight. I really like that. I also like the, you can't set it and forget it, right?
No.
But then also that leads towards a real money making machine for the partners that are, positioned well for it, right? Oh, I think we have a little bleed in here. We can mute everybody else, team. All right. Hey, so we got another, we talked a little bit, you and I, about who's making money. Right? Remember we talked about this, like who's making money. We got a quick poll, okay, and it's an anecdotal poll here, on here, is who made the most money in 1849, the gold rush era? Okay, the gold miner, right? Or the speculators, the merchants selling supplies, or did Bill Gates make all the money in the world back then, which he could have. So this is really good. Okay, look at that. Look at this. I love this. Okay, I think anecdotally this has a lot to do with your answer, David. Do you want to kind of weigh in on this? How does that translate to people today?
Yeah. So the gold rush comparison is pretty useful because the businesses during the gold rush that proved to be profitable, that were that persisted beyond the gold rush, were the ones that sold the tools, that were selling the supplies, the services, rather than the people that were searching for gold themselves. Most of the people that were searching for gold were unsuccessful. Some were, but most of them were unsuccessful. There's a very similar kind of methodology in AI. AI is similar. So customers might be excited about a specific use case that they've kind of conjured up in their mind, but they still need the core supplies. They still they need the person that's selling the supplies, the things I was talking about, the data cleanup, identity design. They have to plan for agent governance. They have to plan for security. They need to have good direction in understanding how AI is going to integrate with their existing workflows. And especially, I mentioned this before, but especially they need to understand cost control. What measures can I use to make sure that this isn't spending all the money that I promised people we're going to save, right? Those are practical problems that a partner can help a customer solve. So, as an example, a customer might decide they want some kind of an agent that can update account records for customers, whatever it might be. Setting up a demo and running a demo, that's kind of the easy part. The harder part is working with the customer to decide how to actually make that demo real. In other words, how do I limit the agent's permissions to only update certain fields in a record? How do I decide how we're going to verify and test that agent's actions to make sure that what it does is consistent, reliable, and can be repeated reliably over and over and over again? How do I monitor it for when there are errors, like data is input incorrectly and things like that? And ultimately, one of the things that's really important is you have to work with the customer to decide who in the organization is going to own that agent or that workflow and be responsible for identifying that it needs to be updated or correcting flaws in the logic. And then ultimately, from a lifecycle perspective, decommissioning it when that agent has run its useful life. So that work, that kind of services work, like we're talking about, that can become a repeatable service. Now the thing to remember as a partner is that you don't necessarily have to have a huge AI practice. You don't have to have people that are data scientists and know how to build their own LLMs and all that kind of stuff. Pick a few things that you're good at, that you can deliver well. Can you deliver co-pilot readiness in a structured and profitable way? Do you know how to help customers govern their agents within the organization? Do you understand how to do AI specific security operations? So it's better for a partner to have a focused practice that is, you might say, easier to staff right? You do a couple things, but you do them really well and improve that iteratively than having just kind of a long menu, like when you go to Cheesecake Factory, right? A long menu of things that you say you do, but the team rarely actually delivers on that.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm thinking this all the time, all day long. I would think about, I would go into a company and think, hey, let's look at your departments. This is how I'd be talking to a customer. Let's look at your departments. Let's get the departments ready for AI and individuals. And you can start with smaller type of projects. Let's get HR, because HR has got 82,000 files in SharePoint dating back to 1996. Hey, right? The reality is nothing's relevant probably, before 2020, right? Like that's all irrelevant stuff. So that is the simplest form of getting ready for AI, in the most simple form. But you do that work, but then you also get the work of implementing the AI afterwards. Holy crap. Bing, 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 right? So, there's nothing wrong with being a ham and egger. There's nothing wrong. You don't have to be this, oh, I'm going to create this agentic AI solution that's going to take over the world because it's going to do this and that. And man, stop. Whoa, take it easy. Take it easy, everybody. Let's do that. All right. Let's move into the next one here. This is sticky. This is a little sticky. So I think we need to talk about this. Recently, CoWork went general availability, GA, right? And it was announced that it would be using consumption-based pricing model versus which means Copilot is licensed the way that CoWork is licensed, right? So it's versus being, seat-based. Okay. So help us understand, like, how we should be thinking about this, or potentially some pitfalls or not pitfalls. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were a bit taken aback by that. And the reason is because when you have that monthly per user per seat licensing, the cost is very easy to explain. It's very easy to predict, right? When you have consumption pricing, it gets a lot harder because the cost depends not just on how many people are able to use it, but what they ask the service to do and how often they do that. Right. So it becomes much more fluid and kind of fluffy in how you figure that out. That means that the technical design affects the bill to a certain extent, right? So if you have a workflow that runs too frequently, if it pulls too much data in from some data repository, or if it keeps retrying failed steps, that can lead to a higher cost than the customer expected, and that can lead to dissatisfaction. What I would say is that the opportunity for partners might be in helping customers understand, how do we set budget limits? How do we define and configure alert, cost threshold alerting? How do we set access limits so that people, certain individuals are allowed to use CoWork, certain people are allowed to access certain data repositories. They can only access them, pull this much data at a time and things like that. And then from a broader business perspective, can you go into the customer on a weekly or a monthly basis and do usage reviews to make sure that they're not going to get these, heart-stopping billing surprises? Because that's where the real consultative work kind of comes in. It's mapping the cost of the service to the question, what business value are we actually realizing from this tool? And which departments are providing that business value? And that helps the customer to be more strategic in how they roll out those tools, and can help them to reduce those costs, is understanding where they're getting the most bang for their buck. So you might think of this as an example. You start a pilot of CoWork, and you define a monthly budget, and there's a small group of approved users that have a scoped set of approved use cases that they're allowed to work within. As they go through this pilot, you might review which workloads are actually creating value for the business, which ones are just creating activity, and then help the customer to either tune or entirely stop the work that actually provides very little value to the business. Yeah. Now, the exact co-work meters, the capacity that a customer might have, the pricing per unit, that might change. It might differ based on the customer's agreement with Microsoft. So you do want to check to make sure that you understand what their current Microsoft licensing guidance is, or what their licensing position is with co-work before you quote something to them. So yeah, even a very good use case with co-work, it can lose support very quickly from the organization if that first bill gives people sticker shock. So you have to kind of plan around that and make sure that you're very targeted in the way that you roll it out, and what customers can expect from that rollout.
You know what I love about that last statement? That's what I love about that last statement is you got to be a steward of your customer's business, right? And I think if you present it that way to your customer and say, hey, look, this is consumption based. This can get crazy. I just want to tell you this right up front. So what we're going to do, we're going to start small. We're going to put some guardrails in place. And and by the way, and I really like Derek Gabriel. Hey, DG, it's good to see you, man. He mentioned in there, it's not a toy, right? And that's actually pretty good, And maybe you say that, hey, this is pretty cool stuff, but we gotta understand it here. It's like, okay, the company bought a new F1 Ferrari. Well, not everyone's gonna get to drive it, bro. Right? Come on, right? So that was really good. That was really good. Okay. And the last thing too. It's when Azure came out, we had the same thing, right, guys? We had
how much more?
When Azure came out, it was the same thing. Hey, team, can we mute the folks that are?
How long do you give me? 5?
Yeah, team.
Sure, give me
5 on each leg or 3 total. Okay.
Well, I don't know if I want
3 on
3.
each leg is fine.
I'll take 5. Yeah. No, maybe 6. 6 ribs. Anyways, okay. The next one here. This is a good one, not as sticky, but. Oh man, everyone always wants to know, what does Microsoft care about? What does Microsoft care about when it comes to their partners? Sometimes it's a challenge to understand what partner activities Microsoft really cares about. What do you see? What are the activities that you see that really cares about?
So the things that partners often focus on are things like deployments, Azure usage, the certifications that they have, customer acquisition, all those things matter, right? But activity alone isn't the goal. So a security workload, and I'm just taking security because that's kind of where I live on the day-to-day. A security workload isn't successful just because someone activated a license and turned it on in a customer's environment. You have to be able to articulate to the customer, okay, here's what changed because we turned this licensing on and because we configured it this way. Did Defender reduce their exposure to a certain type of attack? Did Entra remove risky access by users or sign-ons? Was Purview used to protect some sensitive data? And the maybe the harder thing is, how do you prove those things? What metrics can you use to equip the customer to demonstrate the value that they're seeing? Now, evidence can be a before and after posture review. So look at how many tickets they have and related to security incidents before versus after, right? That might be one thing. It might be a review of adoption data. Maybe it's a customer reference. Maybe it's a documented reduction in something like response time to an incident. Now, one thing that I should emphasize here is that what partners sometimes believe Microsoft cares about are not necessarily the things that Microsoft really does care about. So just a few weeks ago, I was one of the judges on the Partner of the Year Awards for security. And one thing that became very clear over and over again is that a lot of partners have a hard time articulating the value of their work, right? So they'll say what they did, right? They deployed Defender on 700 workstations and they set up Sentinel, and Sentinel's ingesting 200 gig a day, and that's driving ACR. But so what, right? What did that do for the customer? Yeah, Microsoft is happy that you sold the licensing. We're happy that you drive an ACR, but everybody's doing that. Can you articulate what that did for the customer? Did it save them money? Did it solve a problem for them? So some of those outcomes that I described, they might take longer to appear, like when we talked about the before and after, or if there's behavior change involved in people clicking on links in their email or whatever it might be, right? That's why it's worth agreeing on what leading indicators we're going to be looking at very early on with a customer. It keeps the partner, it keeps the customer, and it keeps the Microsoft field sellers focused on the same outcomes instead of arguing later on about whether a project was successful, whether it worked. So from a partner perspective, when you can start telling the story beyond we sold this license, we deployed this service in Azure, we deployed this many seats of Copilot. If you can get beyond that, beyond the deployment, and explain why you're driving value to the customer, that's when Microsoft tends to notice you. Those are the people that get the Partner of the Year awards, is when they can say, we did this and this was the result, right? I had a manager a couple of years ago that whenever I was doing my self-assessment for my review, she said, answer 3 questions: what, so what, and now what, right? So what did you do? What was the benefit of that? And now what are you going to do? So partners need to have the same kind of mindset. If you can think in those terms, what, so what, now what, then you have a better story to tell with Microsoft sellers. And it's not always going to be successful with every single seller. People are different, but at least talk the same language to them.
That's fantastic. That's some great insight, brother. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a little different than the canned stuff that we get, quite a bit, but I really appreciate that. All right, switching gears. Here's another, not as a sticky one, but this is a good one. I like this one, the M- one. How do you see Microsoft M- evolving as a strategic capability for partners and customers? And what role will it play with accelerating AI adoption, improving customer outcomes, and creating new business opportunities across the whole ecosystem? Help us understand it. I know that was a long question.
Yeah,
but
no, that's fine. It's fine. So M-. So just to make sure we understand what M- is, because there were 2 product announcements, actually 3, but one was minor. But 2 products were announced. So there was the M- and there was Project Perception. M-. Think of M- as a code security project or code security tool.
Okay.
Think of Project Perception as coordinated defense. So M- is focused on finding, validating, helping you to prioritize, and then providing recommendations for how to fix vulnerabilities that it finds in your source code repositories, whether that's GitHub, Azure DevOps, whatever it might be, right? So you point M- at your source code repository, you say, tell me what's wrong with my code. It goes out and it identifies potential issues, prioritizes them, and says, here's some things you can use to fix it. So it's helping teams focus on issues that are very real, that are actionable. Project perception is a little bit of a different story. Project perception is a broader agentic defense story. So it brings together 3 teams of agents, right? You've got your blue team, your red team, and your green team. And the idea behind that is that they are designed to help you identify issues that may exist in your organization, orchestrate a response to an issue, and then remediate the issue. So it's more of a way of providing context for what's going on in your organization, orchestrating a response to it, and leaving human control in the security operations. Now, getting back to M-Dash, if you think about how M-Dash might work in the scenario, M-Dash could help a development team that is working through a code validation issue. So they built this tool internally. They've got their stuff stored in GitHub. They point M-Dash at it. M-Dash looks and sees, these are the issues that we've noticed. These are the ones you have to fix most urgently. Project perception would help the security operations team coordinate investigation and response across different agents, different tools. And the exact workflow that it'll use is going to depend on the approved product capabilities as well as the customer's environment. So if the customer has a set of playbooks, like this is how we respond to a phishing attempt or a ransomware attack, you build that within project perception, and it goes out and it does that, and it can do that much quicker than a human can. So they have different functions. But I want to insert kind of a caution here, because the tools, at least for me, they're really interesting. They're really cool. It's neat to see how AI can be used in these scenarios, but try to avoid the temptation of thinking that these are going to work and be applicable to every single customer, right? These tools assume that a customer has at least a moderate level of security discipline, and that the security team can handle things that agents and automation should not do, right? There's some things that we have to have a human in the loop still, and these tools are designed to do some of the other stuff, but there's still going to be things that we want a human to make a decision, judgment related things that the human has to do. Just as an example, I was talking to a partner today, and they were saying that they're trying to figure out, one of their customers received 3 phishing emails, exactly the same, except that one of them came from a different IP than the other 2, and they wanted to understand, okay, why were all the other characteristics ignored and one got through and the other 2 were blocked, right? That's where human judgment comes into play. That's where a human does the analysis and says, this is why this happened. So the tools are cool, love them, but don't imagine that you just drop them into every customer environment and just turn them loose. That's not what they're designed for. They're designed for customers that have a reasonably good security posture.
Excellent. That is, we're so lucky to have you, brother. I'm just telling you, these answers are really awesome. Sincerely, thank you. Because it gives us a little bit different perspective. I think a lot of our speakers that we've already had here are more on the executive strategy and planning stuff. And you come from a little bit different. You come from the real technical side of it. I mean, you're with your 400 certs that you have and all these and it's neat to kind of see a little bit different perspective. I really do appreciate it. All right, so okay, team, look, it's 11:47. I want to and I ask my team, can you guys put together a quick poll that asks, would you like us to continue 10 or 15 minutes over, we normally chop this at the 1 hour. And David, I don't know if you have a few extra minutes to continue. You do, but we're going to poll the group here. So if my team can just put a quick poll together that says, would you like to stay on for another 15 minutes? We'll continue for another 15 minutes. We normally don't do that. So if you can just go ahead and say yes or no, then we'll continue down this. Otherwise, we've got probably room for 2 more questions out of the 6 that I've got left here, or 4 or 5. So just go ahead and let us know. If we got the majority that says yes, we'll continue. Just to stick around then, no problem. Okay, with that being said, while you're voting, I'm going to keep going here, okay, everybody? Everybody's like, no, boom, see you later. All right. Okay, this one is cool, because I want your perspective of this, and we've talked about this once or twice before. Public versus private, okay. Recording stopped. Let's start the recording again.
Our recording is still going. I think that might be somebody else's recording.
Okay. Ours is, that was weird. That was wild. Okay. Anyways, long story short here. Okay. Public versus private. Microsoft Copilot, right, is incredibly powerful when it comes to, with public knowledge, right? But it's the real differentiator is its ability to secure private private data, right? That's the ability to do that. In your view, how important is this? Is it super important to talk to, end customers, right? That are, public versus private, because you're hearing Grok, you're hearing ChatGPT, you're hoping, you're hearing all these different ones, right? Gemini, right? Or whatever, right? So your perspective, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, that's where for a business, the real value comes in. To these AI tools, is understanding how the business operates, and not just how AI in general views the world, right? So public knowledge is helpful when you're using AI, but the bigger value for a customer is when Copilot can use the organization's own files, the meetings, your messages, your business context to provide information. If that information is current, if it's organized properly, and if it can be trustworthy, like what you were saying earlier when you were describing, data that's years old, that's not trustworthy data, right? That is not what we want to be using to give current answers. So, if all that's true, if the data has those characteristics, then it helps employees to spend less time checking and rebuilding their queries and making sure that they're asking the right things. Poor data creates the opposite result. Copilot can find that outdated content. It can find duplicate policies, information that was shared too broadly. So Copilot doesn't create those problems, but as I had it described to me by somebody, was it can shine a flashlight on it, right? So all these problems already existed. It wasn't like they didn't exist, but Copilot says, there they are. That's the problem. And it can help you to understand, where do I need to fix things? So the way that I would look at it is start with the data that's tied to a few very specific use cases, right? Clean up stale content. The example that you gave was great, Sherman, right? So think of like your HR data that needs to be current, that's applicable to everybody. It may be employee handbooks and information about health insurance and whatever it might be, right? So it's pretty easy stuff to know what's current and what you need to do with it. So clean up any stale content, assign owners to the content that needs to stay, look at the permissions, make sure those are right, classify any sensitive information like pay scales or whatever that might be, and then apply your labels, DLP, whatever else you might need to do where that makes sense. So you might have one team that defines an approved knowledge repository or knowledge source before they ask Copilot to answer customer questions. So this is where we store our customer facing answers. What you don't want to do is you can't wait for your entire tenant or your entire customer tenant to be perfect, right? Improve the highest value data first, measure the quality of the results, right? Are people getting the answers that are accurate and trustworthy? And keep that governance motion going after the launch. It may take a couple months, couple years, depending on how large the organization is. It's all services work that you can make good money off of. But by doing that, that's how the customer ends up getting better answers without turning that AI readiness project into just this never-ending cleanup project. So that's kind of the way that the difference between the public and the private data can be articulated.
Excellent, excellent. Our next one here. Gosh, this is really cool. We've been going around looking at touching all these things, but audits. Oh my gosh, and nobody likes to hear the word audit, no matter what, right? No matter what. But in this context, we're talking about audits to get an advanced specialization. So it was recently announced that audits are not going to be limited to just the partners who have Azure specializations, because there are some advanced specializations that didn't need an audit. There was a couple there, right? A few there. These audits are starting to feel more like a barrier, right, rather than a differentiator. We've heard a lot about that. We've heard a lot about the company who does the audits is task oriented, very task oriented. Okay, read between the lines if you want to read on that one, right? Very task oriented. Can you explain why we should invest our time and effort and money getting these advanced certs?
Yeah. So taking off my Microsoft hat for just a moment, I can understand why it can feel like the goalposts are continually moving and why it's getting pushed back, right? If audits are now being applied more broadly to different areas of specialization, like security, like AI, whatever it might be, it can seem less like you're differentiating yourself from your competitors, and more like it's a pay-to-play kind of program. And I personally don't like that, but I don't make the rules. So why does a partner continue to invest? The reason to invest isn't necessarily the audit itself, right? And I think most of you understand that the Microsoft approved answer, putting the Microsoft hat back on, is that it's what the credential can unlock, right? Stronger credibility with customers, stronger credibility with Microsoft sellers, better alignment to your solution areas, access to opportunities where having the ability to verify your deployment capability actually matters. That's the Microsoft approved answer. The answer I give to partners is that the work behind the audit can improve how you deliver your services. So what that means is the things that the audit is measuring can make your business more effective. Having current skills for delivering certain technologies, having a repeatable methodology for how you deliver those things on a regular basis, being able to define ownership of tasks and things that you have to do within the organization, and customer evidence, all those things together, they are what make complex security and other technology projects easier for you to sell and less risky for you to execute. So if you have those ducks in a row, your organization becomes more efficient. It also happens to tick the boxes for the audit, but it makes you a more streamlined and more efficient organization. So make the audit, the work that's part of the audit, how you structure your delivery instead of viewing it as a fire drill, right? So the design decisions that you make, how you define customer acceptance, how you set up testing and measure the results of that testing? Do you get CPOR from your customers? The same evidence that you're going to use to support an audit is the same stuff that makes your business run more effectively, right? Those are the mechanisms or the muscles that you build to drive your business forward. I will say, however, that doesn't mean that every specialization is worth an investment. If it doesn't support a real offer that you are making money off of, if there's no customer demand, if you don't have people qualified to deliver that type of project, if you don't have a pipeline, skip it, right? Whoops.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to go across here. Keep going.
You're good.
Sorry.
So the requirements for the specializations or for the audit are going to change. So before you invest any time, before you invest any money, any resources in saying, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with this audit path, look at the latest program guidance, because Microsoft has a nasty habit of changing things and not making the information real clear to the public. So the way I would simplify that down is the practical value of getting these specializations and going through the audit is the delivery discipline and the opportunities it supports. It isn't the audit itself or the badge itself. It's how you deliver outcomes to your customers.
Excellent. I love that. That's a really good perspective on that. Real quick before we continue, I just want to make sure for the folks that need to leave here, next month we do have Jeff Rigsby, Senior Partner Development Manager, what Microsoft wants, needs, and expects from managed partners. If you ever wanted to become a managed partner, there is no better place to actually hear straight from the person who actually manages partners right now. So want to do that. David, there's a question in the
looking at that.
Yeah, would you want to touch on that? I think that's from the enterprise perspective, I think.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't do a whole lot with Teams Phone, and so I don't keep up with the specializations or that sort of thing. So I don't know that I could give you a good answer.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, and Bill, I think that's probably more on the.
Oh, this is broadly. Oh, okay. So the question is broadly about Teams Phone opportunities. It has nothing to do with specializations.
Yeah, no, this is just broadly, and I think that's more on the enterprise side. Are they actively pushing Teams for enterprise? That's what I'm assuming. And Bill, maybe you want to add a little more color or text to that. No problem. But all right, we got. Let's see. Oh, okay. MCAPs. Let's get into these last two here. MCAP started, they talk constantly about frontier transformation. Is this genuinely a new phase in the market, or is Microsoft simply rebranding AI adoption?
So, yeah, frontier transformation was mentioned a time or two or a dozen.
Yeah.
So the phrase can sound like a rebrand. And the useful test of whether it's a rebrand or something else is whether anything underneath it changes. So what I mean by that is in the first Copilot wave, we're going back maybe a couple years now, a person, an end user, typically used Copilot or AI, broadly speaking, alongside an existing process, right? That's how it was used. They, in most cases, they used it as a fancy search engine. And ask a question, get an answer. That's kind of the extent of it. With agents, and this is where we're getting into the transformation part. With agents, a person can delegate work. They can review exceptions. They can manage several automated, call them actors, agents. And like I mentioned before, earlier on today, that creates questions about ownership, permissions, cost. How do we test these things, and oversight? That is a business transformation that's driven by AI. That's the frontier transformation that we're talking about, is structurally changing how work is getting done. So for an example, a customer adds an agent to a broken approval process. Just adding that agent doesn't fix the process. It might just make the failure. Right? As a partner, again, this is where being a good consultant comes into the picture. This is where you come in and you say, okay, here's how your business process should work. This is where it's broken today. Here's how you can take that same process, take it from being run by a bunch of humans and make it agentic and automate that process. So if it changes the underlying manner to how the business runs, that's the frontier transformation. Some customers are only going to want some very basic assistance, and that's fine. That might be the right choice for them. What you as a partner don't want to do is don't force an operating model transformation where the value and the controls aren't necessarily clear to the customer. Automation is only going to help when it actually improves the process and the customer can govern what it does. So yes, it is a real change, but it's dependent on the customer changing how work gets done, or aligning with the idea that you have to change the way work gets done.
That's great. And we're going to wrap this up. This is the last one here. What's one message from MCAPS that you think some partners are misunderstanding?
Yeah, so don't wait for perfect packaging before you build out a useful capability. Over and over again, I've seen customers, or partners rather, wait for final pricing, final packaging, a clean SKU before they act on anything. And that's understandable to a certain extent, because you don't want things to change underneath you. However, customers are already deciding right now who they're going to trust for AI guidance. And the market is moving so fast every single day that you should expect changes to be happening very regularly, right? You're probably not going to get an AI product that is static for 6 months or a year. So waiting for an absolutely static SKU and licensing model and all that, it's almost a fool's errand at this point. What you can do is start with work that is going to remain useful, that's durable, even if the packaging of that product changes. So like I mentioned, the data readiness, the identity, the governance, the architecture, building an operating model, measuring value, controlling costs, all those things are still going to have value regardless of what the licensing or the SKU looks like. So while it's hard not to, try to avoid guessing or waiting to find out about the commercial details. Build the capability now, and then verify, the meters, the capacity, the licensing before you make a customer commitment. Why do I say that? Because capability is what takes the time to build. Having that skill and being able to deliver it is what takes time. The packaging and the marketing around it can change quickly. So as long as you have the capability in place, then you can just insert the packaging relatively easily underneath that. So you shouldn't let uncertainty about what the packaging looks like stop you from working with customers who have a need.
That's great, man. I tell you what. Hey, dude, this has been one of the best shows we've had in the past 24 months, really. David, no,
I
sincerely.
bet you say that to all the girls.
No. I think most of us can agree that have been on this. This was really fantastic, and just thank you so very much. Also, thank you everybody for staying. Thank you for staying a few minutes over. Really do appreciate it. Also appreciate all the questions and putting your names out there and the poll results. We really appreciate this. We put a lot of effort into this, and we don't like to commercialize it. If you notice that there's not a lot of commercialization here, we don't talk about buy us or buy that or whatever, right? We don't. We're not NASCAR where I've got all the things on us. But anyways, thanks everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next month. Just great job. David, thank you again. Just amazing job. And just so elated today. So, all right, go to the weekend. Have a great day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.